Happy Wednesday, everybody, here on the Southside Beat. My name is Chris Halicke, and kicking off the show solo right now. Crisan will be joining me soon. He is working on the Southside right now, collecting information, talking to players. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about today. As a matter of fact, I know we're going to have a lot to talk about today. So come on in, join the conversation. Leave your comments, ask some questions. We'll get them up here on the screen. We'll talk. We'll chat. Corey will get here. We'll talk more about it. But I have a really good thing I want to kick off on. Yeah. So today was Coordinator Wednesday. You know, everything's moved up a day. Normally coordinators talk on Thursdays. They talked today, which means Eddie Faulkner talked today. And all right. I'm gonna have to pull up the quote just so that I'm not taking anything out of context here. I'm not saying or not recalling anything incorrectly or anything. Oh, okay. On the 4th and 2 play, Eddie Faulkner said this about the 4th and 2 play, which obviously had the it was the go ball to Deontay against cover one man. And I quote, you call plays, and if you look at that play, there were underneath routes and concepts in the concept, really, not in concept, but in the concept. You call plays, and the coverage dictates where the ball goes, and that's where we expected it all the time. Mike Tomlin says it all the time. We don't live in our fears on the calls. It's really just that simple. Unquote. This right here is an example of what I'm talking about when it comes to poor coaching. Now, that is not a dig at Eddie Faulkner. I know it sounds like one, but this is a systemic problem. And whether it is just because this is the offense the Steelers have, because, this was Matt Canada's offense, you can't really change much after he's fired midseason. There are a lot of issues I have with the Steelers offense in general, and the players are not exempt from this. I'm going to get to that in a second too. But by the way, if you hear my dog drinking water in the background, he is the loudest drinker on planet Earth. So it's very, very possible that you can hear him on the mic. He's eating his lunch right now, and it's just hilarious because I'm hearing it I have headphones. Normally Corey's talking to my ear and I don't hear much else, but it's just funny. Anyway. Yeah, Barber. All 22 didn't lie. Yeah, the all 22 didn't lie. Listen, cover one, man across the board. Yeah, that is a favorable. I will put the word favorable time to take a shot. You also have to understand situational football. You need 2 yards, or you give the ball to the other team. That's one issue. So that's why the play call in and of itself is bad. Got to take toys away, or he's going to be squeaking the entire show. Dude, calm down, boy. My dog making another appearance on the show. That's one issue right there. Yeah, Lyle says we don't live in our fears, no popcorn. But so here's the issue with the popcorn. The popcorn is that's a way of them saying it's not just one issue. There's not just one fixable, catch-all issue to fix all of the issues on offense. There's not. And if there was, it would be easy to fix. There are issues all over the place, and that's one of the reasons why this offense is so bad. That play call is bad. You give yourself where you are going into the play thinking that if you get the coverage that you want, your best option for converting 4th and 2 is on a deep ball. That's a bad play call. It's a low percentage throw even against a favorable coverage. It just is. Because if you miss the throw, the window for missing is much, much smaller. If you miss on a 5-yard slant, you have a little bit more room for error because it's a much shorter throw. If you throw the ball deep, your margin for error, there pretty much is none. You've got to put it right where the receiver can get it, and if it's not there, it's not going to be caught. it's a low percentage throw even against a favorable coverage. So it was already a bad play call. Then he wants to talk about the underneath routes and the concepts. Listen, if you know that they're there, which obviously it's part of the play call, you know that they're there. You're the interim offensive coordinator. You know they're there. Whenever Allen Robinson moves over in motion, and you can see that the guy who's with him is not only following him, which is telling you that it's man coverage, especially since there's also press on the outside, but he's lining up 5 yards off the line of scrimmage and you need 2. That's your go-to. Coach that. Coach your quarterbacks to look for that stuff. That's another big part of it. So we'll get to the Tomlin stuff here in a little bit too. It is being talked about ad nauseum. So, Matt says the quarterback decision making isn't very good. No, it's not. That's another issue. The quarterbacks are not making good decisions. But again, part of me wonders, is that also coaching? I don't think it's completely on the quarterbacks. I don't think it's also completely on the coaching. I think there is shared blame there. But whenever I see Kenny Pickett reading Hank from outside in to instead of inside out, which is pretty much where it's coached everywhere. Now, granted, just for clarity, I don't like the Hank concept, especially out of a static formation. It's old football. It's not good in 2024 or 2023. It's not good. I'm already trying to get to next year. But when he's reading an outside in or he's reading the flat first, that's not the way Hank is coached almost anywhere else. That to me is like, to me is that is it being coached that way, or is Kenny making that decision? You know what I'm saying? Like it's got to make you wonder. That's just an example. I could go on and on with details, but we have a short amount of time, and plus, once Corey gets here, we have some actual news and business to talk about. So this is just kind of commentary to talk about. Yeah, there's just so many issues. And Matt, don't get me wrong. It's there with Trubisky. This is not just a Kenny issue. I was using the way Kenny reads the Hank concept as an example. That's bad. I honestly don't remember the Steelers running Hank against the Titans, or against the Titans. Geez, I'm all over the place. Against the Patriots last Thursday. I do not remember them running Hank. I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying I don't recall it. There's another part of this that when it comes to coaching, that I earlier I said, like last week I said that this offense has to have a complete overhaul. And speaking of Corey, welcome.
Am I heard okay? Do I sound okay?
You're good, man.
Okay, good.
You're good.
Hello.
What's up, Corey? Stuff on
outside
today, man.
I don't know what you've been talking about.
We've been talking about popcorn.
Well, I got something a little better than popcorn.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I know Najee talked, and I have a feeling that's what you're going to lead off with. But yeah, just to kind of wrap up this whole popcorn talk, pretty much been talking about that quote from Eddie Faulkner on the 4th and 2. Dude, you got to stop with the squeaky toys. My dog is making appearance after appearance on the show. Yeah, like okay. No, this is decent res Corey today. Doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm okay.
I think we figured it out that Corey's hotspot is better than the Steelers internet on the south side. But
which is a shame on their part.
Yeah, we Jim remembers my dog's name, Fergus. Good job, Jim. Thank you, buddy.
There you go, Jim.
Jim. No, but no, so talk about that quote on the 4th and 2 play and how I'm talking about that's indicative of all of the issues that they have on offense. And it's not just the players, it's not just the coaching. I do want to get to the players here in a second because Merrill Hodge had some choice words for the Steelers receivers and tight ends that I saw it 10 minutes before going live, and I'm going to add that to our feed after the show is over. He had some choice words for our receivers and tight ends here in Pittsburgh. Yeah, it was bad. Anyway, Corey, take it away. Najee Harris dropping some more truth, maybe.
Wow. Well, James, first off, no, the Steelers did not trade Mike Tomlin, so don't get that started. Najee Harris was asked about Ben Roethlisberger's comments. To paraphrase what Ben said, that the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers is done.
Ooh.
And well, first off, if you want an actual newsworthy note, Najee said he's going to play Saturday. So there's that. So there's the newsworthiness of what Najee had to say. But Najee talked about what Ben had to say, and like at first he didn't really know what was talked about, but he was made aware of the comment about the tradition being over with and done with. And it's in the feed on DKPittsburghSports.com in full.
I'm going there now.
To go to the back half of it, Ben knows what the standard is, somebody that's credible. And then Najee goes on to say, I got here in his last year, so I can't really say I know what the Steeler way is. Because he, meaning Ben, has been here with Troy Polamalu, he's been here with Jerome Bettis. And then Najee finishes off with, he knows that really. So if someone outside sees that and has built in this building, you can kind of guess and say maybe he's right. That's strong from Najee. Very strong from Najee. And again, he's right on two accounts. Number one, he was only here for 1 year under Ben.
Mm-hmm.
So if he doesn't know what the Steeler way is from that standpoint, like he didn't cross over with Pouncey or cross over with Hines Ward or cross over with any of those guys or Bettis or any of those guys.
Yeah.
So Ben, in that effect, has to be the one to pass it on to guys like Najee before he retires. He can't pass it on to Kenny Pickett because Kenny Pickett wasn't here with Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
So, like Mason Rudolph was here with Ben Roethlisberger, but he's not the guy that's called onto the field every Sunday to make plays.
Yeah.
So with that said, like that last sentence from me from Najee just screams to me, quote, he knows that really. So if somebody outside sees that and he's been in this building, you can kind of guess and say maybe he's right. That is strong from Najee, coming from a player's perspective. And we've talked the last couple of weeks, the last several weeks about leadership and who's really the one taking the reins. And when I go back to what Mitch Trubisky said yesterday, when he was asked about who's the guy that's rallying the troops, so to speak, and the three names he put out there were Mason Cole, Najee, and Allen Robinson. I mean, right there, Allen Robinson's the guy that's been here for 13 games.
Yeah.
Mason Cole's been here for 2 seasons. And Najee, again, he just said it. And I direct quote, I got here in his last year, so I can't really say that I know what the Steeler way is.
Yeah.
That's what the offense is down to when it comes to those guys. So that really, I think, is something strong in terms of the culture, in terms of, again, the way, pun intended, that things are done. I found that really fascinating from Najee today.
Matt brings up a pretty good point here that I do kind of want to, and this isn't going to pile on Deontay. It's just going to spit some truth on the situation. The offensive weapons are so young that they really don't know what Steelers football is in reality. Hold on a second. Deontay should know, but Deontay should know, but he isn't a leader. No, he's not. Like Deontay is not a leader. Like he is the leader in the receiver room, but he's doing it even though that's not his calling card. That's not who he is. Najee is a leader, right? He's a natural born leader. He embraces that role.
Mm-hmm. And the locker room embraces him.
Yes, yes. And that's how you know somebody's a natural born leader. When somebody can come in and become a captain year 2, that's somebody who commands respect, not just with the way he works, but with the way he talks. That's not Deontay. Now, that doesn't mean that it's a slight on Deontay. It just means that's not how he is. Not everybody's a leader. You don't need everybody to be a leader, because then if you have a bunch of leaders yelling at each other saying, follow me, or no, follow me. You need guys who are followers. Deontay is more of a follower. He admitted to me when he's talking about, trying to become a leader, or, he's like, that's, I'm a soft-spoken guy. That's just, it's not easy. It doesn't come naturally for me. That's fine. That's not giving him any kind of pass or pardon or anything like that. But when Ben was, his last couple years, if Ben wasn't trying to foster the Steeler way to the younger players, then shame on him. But if he was, or if he was trying to, and I mean, he even talked about when he was talking about the music in the locker room. He even said, near the end, he's like, I'm in the minority here. If you guys want to do it, then you want to do it, fine or whatever. This is why I don't like it. And if that's using just one example, then he could have been trying to foster it and pass it along. But if nobody's listening, then it doesn't really matter. And how much can Ben do with a guy like Pat Freiermuth or with a guy like Najee Harris in 1 year? How much? Obviously Jerome Bettis had a huge impact on Ben in 2 seasons. Now, granted, they also went 15-1 in one of those seasons and then won the Super Bowl in the second.
It had the best defense in football for however many years it was.
Yeah. So, no, there's obvious, they were way more tightened up and buttoned up, and successful on the field. So that obviously, winning cures a lot of things, so it's a lot easier to handle those situations like that. But seriously, in reality, how much can Ben do with 1 year with Najee or Pat? And those are 2 guys he specifically mentioned in terms of guys who possibly could pass on the Steeler way. I know Ben really likes Pat. Ben's liked his tight ends for pretty much his entire career. I mean, Heath Miller, and then yeah, obviously Pat Freiermuth. But it's just that's really interesting to hear Najee say, because if there is nobody who can really foster that, then who do you turn to? The only other person you really can is Mike Tomlin.
Well, no, you don't turn to anybody. Do you know what you do? You create your own new way, is what you do. You create your own way based on what the leaders have previously experienced. Now, again, when you ask about the offensive leaders, again, the answer from Mitch Trubisky was Allen Robinson, Mason Cole, and Najee Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what can Allen Robinson draw from being here for 13 games? Really nothing much.
Yeah.
And he's trying to pick up on the Steeler way, so to speak, from those guys that are already here. So the Mason Cole and the Najee Harris.
Yeah.
Najee was here with Ben. Mason wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you default to? Do you default to the running back who is in his 3rd year and had to pick up from the Super Bowl quarterback when he was in the middle of trying to figure out what the NFL is and how to run in the NFL and how to be a professional? That's what they have. And look, some could say Deontay Johnson, Anthony McFarland, any of those guys that were here during that time, but those numbers are running thin now. Yeah. Just look at the roster. You don't have to look far. Just look at the roster.
A lot of turnover on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, look at the guys that were here with Ben and post-Ben. PB and PB, if you want. Pre-Ben and post-Ben. Like, the numbers that are post-Ben are way greater than the numbers pre-Ben.
Yeah.
So those mentalities from his offenses are just not going to be here. They're thinned out. Now you have a younger core with Kenny Pickett in his 2nd year, Najee in his 3rd, Pickens in his 2nd, Deontay in his 5th. Like, you have a younger core to go around. And then you bring in veterans like a Mason Cole and an Isaac Seumalo and a James Daniels, guys up front that have won and done well in other places to kind of mesh with that. I thought it was important when the Steelers signed Seumalo and Nate Herbig in the offseason because they were in Philadelphia. They were in a winning culture. And when those 2 signed, that was a huge point of emphasis, was that they picked up 2 guys that had been to and won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, like, when you don't have that kind of experience, you have to go find it, and you have to go create your own Steeler way and create your own way, period.
Yeah.
And if Ben is saying the Steeler way is done, that's because the Steeler way that he grew up with and the Steeler way that he experienced is going away. And he's right, because it is, because those players are not here anymore.
Yeah. And there's a way, and when Ben was talking, for anybody who watched the podcast or who hasn't watched the podcast, I should say, go watch it. It was really good, at least just that one part. And it's split up into chapters so you can find it easily. One thing that he was talking about, or at least his co-host talked about, was that the early 2000s Steelers, did a pretty decent job of, doing everything that they could to emulate the 70s Steelers, but had to find a way to modernize it, right? The game is not the same as it was in the 70s. The game had evolved quite a bit. It was, even though it still wasn't, it wasn't anywhere near like a passing league like it is now. Teams were still throwing the ball a little bit more. Defenses were way more exotic. Offenses were way more complicated. There's a way you have to modernize it, not just on the field, but even kind of off the field, and how the game had changed on a global level. And they found a way to do it. And so how do you do it now? I think that's a question that needs to be asked. How do you do that now? It's a difficult situation to find, because somebody brought it up. Jeff Saturday said that players dictate the culture. They really do. The head coach can have an impact for sure. I mean, I am a firm believer that the captain of the ship, whether it's the head coach in a football team, the manager on a baseball team, whoever it is, helps kind of guide that culture a bit and can help with how it's shaped.
Which is Mark says here, do you think Ben's assessment is a shot at Tomlin? I don't think it is. I think that's more about the players that are here. I think that's more about the adaptation from within the locker room and not from, so to speak, the offices in that way. Now, Barber says, but Corey, bringing in outsiders that have their culture woven into ours changes the overall question.
That's the best one. Original Coke is the best one. Sorry.
Barber says, bringing the outsiders that have their culture woven into ours, meaning the Steelers, changes the overall question. No, I think it just changes the answer. You can build a new culture by bringing in players that have won elsewhere, and they can adapt. I mean, why do you think Andy Weidel was hired? Yeah. Why do you think Omar Khan was promoted? Why do you think the front office trickle-down effect is what it is?
Yeah.
And now, when you have players that were not here in Ben's tenure, they have to find a way to create their own. This is from the locker room. This isn't from Art Rooney down. This is locker room down. This is player-led stuff, which is why I keep driving home what Mitch said the other day about Mason Cole, Allen Robinson, and Najee Harris being the leaders of the offense. That's what this is all about. I mean, I know the popcorn talk was the title of the show, but wow, I mean,
no, this is
powerful stuff for Najee today. I think that's an absolutely noteworthy discussion to have.
No, it definitely is, and honestly, this really does all kind of like intertwine together. It really does, because the issues that we see on the field, which are a lot of issues that we see on the field, the culture in the locker room really kind of dictates everything that happens on that football field, whether it be on the practice field or whether it be what happens in a stadium or what happens in the meeting rooms. Like, if that culture is broken, if that culture is unhealthy, then you're not going to have good results. You're just not. You don't have players who might buy in the way that they want, that the way that the Steelers teams used to. And so here's the other thing when it comes to the Steelers and how it's a different organization than almost any other in football. I'm not saying no other teams do this, because they obviously do. But how often do the alumni players come back for a visit? Just come back and hang around for a little bit. It's quite a bit. Just last year, I saw Mel Blount three times at least.
Several times.
Mel Blount's around a lot, and then you have, I mean, obviously they do the alumni thing, once per year, and you get, players from 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. You get players from, everybody from Mean Joe Green all the way to Cordell Stewart and Jason Gilden and, other guys who played in the 2000s who necessarily weren't on Super Bowl winning teams, but just overall guys who understood and have a place in Steelers history. And it's not just the marquee guys who get the golden jackets and who get, who are, placed on this pedestal, but even all of these other guys who played throughout the years, who understand what it's been like to be a Steeler. And all of those guys, when they're around, if you're a Steelers player, pick their brains, man. Ask questions. They're there. It's not like they're not there. It's not like you don't know how to ask those questions. They are there. The moment you see Mel Blount walking around, like, man, I'd be talking to him until I annoyed the crap out of him. That's Mel Blount. He changed the game for cornerbacks. Like literally changed the game for cornerbacks. Ask questions. You know? Dude still looks like he can play, by the way.
Oh yeah.
He still looks like he could play. But
all right, so 2 points here from Monongahela Mike. Mike says the NFL has killed the Steelers way, and then later on he goes on to say, define the Steelers way. I think the Steelers way is best defined by exactly what Ben Roethlisberger experienced, and then that cutoff point that we're talking about. I think the Steelers way is the adaptation of we're going to play amazing defense and then run the hell out of the football and pound you into the ground until that's on the field. And then off the field, it's a culture of leadership. It's a culture of buy-in. It's a culture to an extent of selflessness.
That's more of it. I think even outside of like, okay, the tradition of like the Steelers being a hard-nosed defensive team, blue collar, all that, like, yes, like that's been the Steelers over time. But I can look at the Steelers in the middle of the last decade of, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18. Like I can look at those teams and think that those were Pittsburgh Steelers teams. They weren't great on defense. They weren't. If they were, they would have won a Super Bowl or at least gone to one. They weren't great on defense. They were phenomenal on offense, and they did most of that stuff on offense through the air. That's not your typical Pittsburgh Steelers team, but I think that's why it goes more into that culture you're talking about. And I used 2 words yesterday that I think kind of help define it: excellence and accountability. That accountability factor of not being afraid to take dude, to the side while you're on the sideline, grab him by the face mask, pull him in close, and be like, "What the F are you doing out there? Get your head in the game. Get your crap together." Like sometimes that accountability doesn't always have to be that, but I mean, I don't see that very often. It's guys who just kind of have these conversations and I don't know. And then obviously excellence is the other part of it. The Steelers strive for a Super Bowl every single year. They never go into a season saying we're going to tank, we're going to look for the future. I'm like, no, every year is about winning that 7th Lombardi. And then whenever they win that one, the next year will be about winning that 8th Lombardi. It's always going to be about getting the next Lombardi, on South Water Street. That's what it's always going to be about. And so I'd say those 2 words, because it is more about what happens in the locker room, in the meetings, what happens off the field, and what happens on the field.
Brian says the reality is players born in the 2000s have a higher sense of entitlement.
Well, we're going into a whole new situation.
Well, I'm just going to do this real quick, okay? I'm not going to say, like, Brian, stop being get off my lawn guy. I'm not going to do that. But I'll just say, think to back when you were 23, 22, 21 years old. Chris can think, I could think, anybody here could sit here and think back to when they were that age. You were not a totally mature person at that age. Nobody was. You know why? Because you were 21, 22, and 23 years old.
I can't believe I got married at 23. Like I look back at how I was as a person at 23 years old, and I'm like, I'm surprised I got a woman to agree to marry me.
All right, Brian says he was born in 98. So, okay, this is good then. Like, yes, they might have a sense of entitlement, but also they're still 20, 21, 22, and 23 years old. Like, they're not like the fully mature, full-grown men. They're still kids to an extent. Like, some of these guys that were drafted can barely have a beer and go out and have a beer and do all that kind of stuff. Like, this is just a different, I guess, fabric, if you want to, that this offense is. It's a very young offense. It's a very immature, and I mean that not in the sense of pouty. I mean immature in a sense of still have a lot of time and space to grow into kind of offense. And that's just kind of what they are. Like, they are what they are. And look, if the Steeler way that was known by Ben and Hines Ward and Jerome Bettis and all those guys doesn't resonate with them, that's because it's the same Steeler way that was adapted before they were in diapers, aka pre-2000. So like you have to line up the times here to an extent, I think.
I don't think we need to go too much into Ben Roethlisberger's past to see how immature he used to be too. That's pretty much all we need to say. The dude had his issues off the field in the earlier stages of his career. I mean, whenever he was winning Super Bowls, he was still at probably his most immature level. and it definitely affected his personal life, and it even affected the Steelers on the field, because he got suspended 4 games for stuff. So it's not just the motorcycle. I mean, this is not just motorcycle stuff. This was obviously the big scandal with him.
Big picture stuff. Yeah.
Yes. This was talk about like scandals and stuff like that. Like, he was a very, very immature person. That's way bigger than anything George Pickens is doing pouting on the field, or anything Deontay is doing celebrating a touchdown while getting absolutely trounced by a 2-10 team. That's minor stuff compared to the stuff that the Steelers had to deal with Ben Roethlisberger. The difference there is the entire Steelers culture around Ben was all about accountability. And Ben knew that he let his entire team down by doing all that kind of stuff. And I think, obviously, when it got bad enough, and I'm not going to try to sit here and rewrite history because I'm not, but we saw a drastic change in Ben after the 2010 season when he got suspended for 4 games. We saw a change in Ben, not just of like who he was off the field. Obviously, you see him, he got married, he got settled down, he started having kids, and now he's, part of the whole McWasp family. He's like the epitome of it. But yeah, it's the entire culture around that team back then. It was a little bit easier even for your star quarterback to fall off the rails with personal issues, because that entire team was buttoned up, whether it was Bill Cowher at the helm or whether it was Mike Tomlin at the helm. So, the thing is that this team is not prepared for that kind of stuff right now. And that is a serious issue. And so you gotta kind of wonder, okay, how do you do this? Do you try to establish it? Do you need to do a hard reset? Do you need to move on from Mike Tomlin? Like, these are all questions. I'm not saying you need to do all of these things. I'm saying these are questions that need to be asked for sure. Yeah. And once this season is over, Art Rooney II has some big time decisions to make, because this is a turning point for this organization.
All right, great conversation today. I have to get out. I have to get running. Real quick, news note: Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt are still in the concussion protocol. That is as of right now. Now, they practice in a limited capacity on Tuesday. No injury report yet for Wednesday, so that'll dictate what they are. But they still are in the concussion protocol. It's important to note. Najee Harris with the knee injury and Atlanta Roberts with the groin injury both told me today that they're going to play Saturday. So there's the noteworthy stuff. We'll be back tomorrow again on Thursday to get those inactives rolling. We'll see who's in, who's out, hopefully, by the time we're on the show. And obviously tomorrow's another open locker room. So we will, get a little more clarity, hopefully, on TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. But for now, we're going to get out of here. DK and Ramon coming up in about 25 minutes or so, right here on DK Pittsburgh Sports on YouTube. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. That all goes a very long way. And remember, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Play, and on Spotify. So for Chris Halicke, my name is Corey Crisan. This has been the Southside Beat. Have a good day, everybody. Cheers.